All right. Hey, thank you today. Today we're going to be talking on the topic of the NAR settlement, which is affecting the real estate industry. And I think what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be having at least, I don't know, 2 to 3 different segments on this. And at the end, I'm going to have my own uh, summary or what I think of what this all means. So right now, I'm just like everyone else. I'm just trying to get information. And today I have 2 people that are deep in the industry. And if you guys could introduce yourself to everybody, it would be great. We'll start with Christina.
I'm Christina Hoffmeyer. I'm the broker owner of Realty One Group Ultimate, currently in Elwood City, and then coming soon to Newcastle and New Brighton.
Oh, cool.
My name's Matt Morella. I'm the managing partner of MJM Law. We do a lot of real estate work, and in Beaver County specifically, we're seeing an influx of tax assessment appeals that are coming through now. So thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, guys, being that you guys are in the industry, you being a broker, you being a real estate attorney, I thought you guys may have some insight to help maybe educate somebody as stupid as myself about this, to help form an opinion. Um, or if there isn't even an opinion, it needs to be formed. Um, what are you gathering from this settlement? What, Christina, we'll start with you. What are you gathering from this? And I know there hasn't been tons of information right now.
No, I mean, lack of information is what's scaring all of the agents, especially agents who don't understand the settlement and the lawsuit to begin with and the laws surrounding those. So I'm really glad Matt is here that can shed some light on the nuts and bolts of what we're supposed to be doing and maybe what we haven't been doing as an industry over the last couple of years. I think that agents can really see this as an obstacle, or they can see this as an opportunity to grow and really strengthen themselves as buyers agents and listing agents and really educate the community on the services that they provide. It's true that there's going to be a lot of changes coming down. We only know of the simple changes that have to happen, like not putting out on the MLS the buyer agency commission. And before we even start this conversation, that does not mean that buyers agents can no longer be paid. It's just a matter of how we communicate that compensation with both our clients and with each other. So those processes have to change. And if you've been in the real estate industry for any period of time previous to 10 years ago, then this is not something that is new. It's just something that we've gotten away from. And it's something we need to start implementing again. So there's goods and there's bads with this NAR settlement, but I think that we can use this as an opportunity to grow.
What are you thinking about this settlement?
And just building off that, Christina, I think it's a really good point to make that this is an opportunity for non-traditional agents or firms to innovate their practices and come in and I don't want to say disrupt the industry, but I think it really kind of opens the door to allow everybody a good opportunity to uh, get some business and move forward with real estate. But like to the legal side of things, Christina's right. We haven't gotten much guidance yet. We don't really know what the impact is going to be. This was a settlement between the DOJ and the National Association of Realtors, and we don't know what the impact yet is really going to be broad spectrum. Um, where I think things are going to go is probably just more transparency between agents, brokers, and consumers. That
Mhm.
was kind of the theme of the settlement was NAR, you're implementing policies, practices that are not so consumer friendly, and this settlement is guiding or setting guidelines essentially for brokers, real estate agents, and real estate professionals to be more transparent with their practices. Um, and basically, it's a consumer friendly type of sell.
So my question out of this from the legal standpoint, this was a civil lawsuit, correct?
Correct.
So that being a civil lawsuit and it being a civil settlement, where does the DOJ really come into this? Because I guess where I'm confused in all of this is how did they create law besides case law? I mean, the DOJ doesn't have the ability just to create laws. I mean, I remember going to high school. I know that you got to pass a couple things and whatnot.
Yep.
I mean, who is a DOJ to just and and why is just one or two people getting all this money? And if the DOJ, can you explain that to me? That's where I'm sort of lost on
Yeah,
this.
that's a really good question. And just to back up a little bit, it's a civil side that the criminal penalties aren't being imposed, but the DOJ kind of has this broad duty of administering justice, antitrust laws, consumer protection laws, and they do have the right to take action on behalf of a group of persons
Yeah.
to enforce those laws. So I don't want to go into a history lesson here
Yeah.
or a government type of 101, but we do have three branches of government. It's the legislative, judicial, and executive branch, and the DOJ is an arm of the executive branch, and their job is to enforce the laws and the policies. And in this case, they determined a violation of antitrust laws, and that's what they wanted. That's what they want to do. And the National Association of Realtors is kind of the target, if you will. They have a big,
Hmm.
big target on their chests, and I guess that's how they decided to move forward with enforcing that.
So that being that being the civil settlement in a way. Um, One, I was surprised NAR has as much money as it has. So I don't know how NAR gets all their money, and I don't know how much they consulted with the largest firms. I would hope that they would have, but I also understand that the settlement does not protect everybody. And so where does that fall? You have to be a member of NAR. It also, I saw that it only protects people under a certain threshold of closings. So do you think out of the settlement we're going to get, there's actually going to be an actual law? Or do you think that just this is more just antitrust and you guys just can't communicate through the MLS system? Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, and I think Christina can probably speak to it on the broker side of things, but it's where I see this going potentially is guidelines being issued by the DOJ or administrative wing of the government stating, this is where we feel your practices should be what they should be aligned with, and kind of set up a roadmap, if you will, for all of us to we can't do anything without any guidance.
Sure.
We can only read the laws, we can read the case law, but until we actually get some guidance as to how are these laws going to be implemented and enforced, we're kind of in the dark right now.
Hmm.
And I've read that some people are questioning whether they want to be a member of NAR, because if this only applies to NAR, then um, they may not want to have to comply with that. I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going for this. It's really just NAR jumping in and settling things for people that are a member of NAR. But what if you're not a member of NAR? Does this apply? Do we have a concern with we're in election year?
mhm.
Is it going to be the same DOJ? Yes, we know it's a. Could there be an interruption? Does anybody have? Has that been talked about at all?
I think it's being bounced around.
Yeah,
I- I'm not going to be the one to advise somebody not to follow the kind of the dictates that have come
yeah.
from this settlement. Um, but I think it opens the door
Okay.
to that conversation. I don't think we can go either way at this point. I would say follow the law, follow the case law, and if the DOJ comes out and says we're going to do something this particular way, then agents, brokerages should probably be following in line with that guidance.
So what prevents people from copycat lawsuits from right now? What would stop somebody else from filing the same lawsuit? Because let's face it, not all the sellers that have, I'm not convinced that anybody has been injured or anything from that. But what's going to stop other consumers here in Beaver, in Lawrence County, in different areas? They're not getting any of that money. Was it $480 million?
Yeah, to follow up on that, I'm getting a lot of junk mail, even me personally as a broker, asking if I have been, monetarily injured by a real estate agent, by a lot of different law firms out there. So that's a question that I think weighs heavy on all agents' minds.
Yeah, I mean, this is just so what would prevent another lawsuit being filed and it being honored? I don't know. I'm not saying
Yeah,
that you know this. It just this stuff's blowing my mind right now.
it's a good question. You have to look at who are the parties to a lawsuit. Here it was the DOJ going after the National Association of Realtors. So if you have private parties that wanted to initiate a lawsuit, you would have to have a viable cause of action to do so. But really, this was more of a, in my view, probably a one-time consumer protection type of action that was taken against um, a large organization with a lot of members. And how do you prevent it? To your question, it's hard to prevent somebody from filing a
Hmm.
lawsuit if they want to file a lawsuit.
Yeah.
But I, I guess the door's open, Christina, if you're getting letters and
Yeah, I
mailings.
mean,
This is what scares me, guys. This is what I'm really worried about. I'm not worried about, oh, we're not going to pay 2.5%. Like, to me, I'm more worried about, well, if we're saying it was wrong, which I'm not convinced it was wrong, because what I understand with the settlement, they're just saying,
and
hey,
NAR,
we just want it to go away.
yeah, NAR has not said that it was wrong. However, they have agreed to settle and change their practices.
Right.
And saying, okay, well, maybe, there's a change with the time and maybe it's due in time that we start changing our practices.
Okay.
For the benefit of everybody, whether it's black, white, or gray, this is what the people want. This is what we're going to give them. And I think that's the main purpose of the settlement, like it or don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? NAR's objective, I think, is to protect its members who are the agents and the brokers underneath them and say, okay, the buck stops here. This needs to stop. So what do we got to do to make the bleeding stop?
But NAR is it's just like a club, isn't it? It's not, it's, it's just like the, joining the Chamber of Commerce, isn't it? Or
I
is
mean,
it?
I
It's
think
not
we all
government bound, is it?
Well, I think all of us have a love-hate relationship when it comes to NAR. We
Okay.
don't like, what I mean, one of the things is nobody likes paying fees. Nobody likes paying money for anything. I wish everything in life was free, but the fact of the matter remains is that they do support us in legal matters. Whether we get our own way or not is a completely different story because everybody has a different
But
opinion.
they make policy, not law, correct?
So,
Yes.
NAR does not
no,
make law.
Okay.
That's
no,
right.
they
Right.
make policy.
Because we get a lot of agents that pretend that they're attorneys. Oh, this is against the law. Well, where the hell is it? Or you mean that's against a practice or a policy? So I guess what I'm trying to do is I want people to realize what's law and what's procedure policies. Just like these MALA systems, they're they're not government owned. They're just clubs too that you join too.
Correct. And what you're going to have to do is you're really going to have to look at the real estate commission. They are telling you how an agent has to act and behave by law. Now, NAR takes that a step forward or a step above just saying, okay, well, these are our policies and these are our code of ethics that we are going to follow as members over and above the minimums that the law has set.
Makes sense.
So they may say, when it comes to, even though the real estate commission doesn't specifically say you can't put the buyer's agency commission on the MLS, NAR is saying, well, this is already in upheaval. These are what the consumers want, even though, there's no law stating that it's being objectified as taking advantage of the community. So we're going to take that a step further. We're going to take it off altogether. So even though it has not become law yet, it is now policy that's going to change in July for all NAR members. Now, whether you're part of NAR or not, that's completely up to you and completely up to your broker's procedures. Some people love it, some people hate it, but at the end of the day, it's a lot harder for us as agents to be able to conduct business in an efficient way without NAR and without the MLS, because a lot of the tools, services, and communication we need filter through those two memberships.
So the MLS systems, who do they answer to? Does anybody know?
Mm, that's a great question.
I
That is
mean,
a good question.
That's a
it,
great question.
see, it's just an
Not to
organ.
me. They don't answer to me, just to be
No,
clear. I don't get a vote.
and guys, that's what I'm laughing is like MLS is like dictating on how agents do business in the first place. Like your listing gets kicked out. Well, it's against the law. I get fines. It's not against the law that you don't have your pictures in. That's against their rules.
Yes, it's
But
against their
their
policies.
policies. So it's like I it's almost like they've been running the show a little bit.
Well, I mean, here you got to look at this too, is that any broker, any agent does not have to have a membership in
That,
the MLS.
that's
It is
right. They don't.
optional. And there are multiple MLSs for our service area that we're sitting in now. It's just that nobody knows that. West Penn is the largest and by far the most organized and easy to use. But you don't have to use any at all. If that's, if you open up a brokerage and say, we're not going to be on the MLS, there's still a lot of mom and pops out there that do that. And they get to run the show as long as that they are confined to the laws that the real estate board says they have to do. And they can market any way they want to as long as it meets or exceeds the law. But we all know that the MLS is beneficial when it comes to marketing and selling our
I
properties and
agree. I
networking
agree.
with other agents. And the consumers have now, now they want to see, well, my listing isn't on Zillow, my listing isn't on realtor.com. I went on this broker's website and it's not on there. It's just now assumed that that's just kind of part of the package when
Okay.
you're with the listing agent. Doesn't mean it has to be. And maybe those habits are going to change as all of this unfolds. Maybe it won't. Maybe the link between the agent and the MLS will only grow stronger.
Right.
That's just something that people are going to have to figure out as we go along.
Yeah, and I think you and I like we're not subject to the Malta system. Like I don't know what realtors are getting paid until they submit commission statements to me. I don't know what they've offered. Um, I know it's a way that you guys communicate with each
Mm-hmm.
other, and I think that's really what this lawsuit is sort of about. It's about, well, they were all communicating through one area, which for them to you guys still are going to all communicate and agree through B car, all the different
But
like.
but it won't be so easy to find. So one thing that the Real Estate Commission does state and mandate is that you're not allowed to publicize a set rate of commission. And I think what the hubbub is about when it comes to this lawsuit is that by us putting that information, BAC, in there of 2.5%, 3%, 100%, whatever it is, because I'm not quoting commission rates, is they're saying that it was publicized, therefore the entire community that was in, that belonged to NAR, that belonged to that brokerage, that belonged to the MLS, was then publicizing what their contract stated, therefore setting the standard of that whatever number to be within the market, whatever that number is. And I can see how that can get really gray
Mhm,
really quickly,
mhm.
because even though it wasn't out for the public eye, it was out for the entire agent community to see. So everybody knew what was quote unquote acceptable or not acceptable, or what was the market average or not the market average when it came to buyer agency commissions.
Okay.
So we didn't, there was no negotiation between the two agents. There was no, am I getting paid from the seller or do I have to collect it from my buyer? In addition to that, a lot of agents told buyers that their services were free. And real estate buyers agents have never been free. They were just never maybe taught or trained that somebody's paying for that, whether it's your client or not, somebody's paying for that.
Sure.
Somebody's getting charged for that.
Sure.
And the buyer maybe should get charged a little bit more often for the services provided by their agent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is really going to make a difference with how maybe buyer's agents are seen in the market, because right now the listing agents are up here and the buyer agents are down here saying, well, you're going to get whatever the listing agent gives you. Well, I think that's going to balance the scales a little bit. And the buyer's agent are going to really have to bring their value and negotiate what their worth is to the table. And that should be happening all along.
So how does the real estate brokers, how do they agree on this settlement if they're not allowed to communicate through one platform like like the MLS? Aren't they, isn't this a catch 22? It's like, well, no matter where we all advertise it or do it together, isn't that collusion?
Well, no, I don't think we should be advertising it at all.
Okay.
So think about way back when, um, when we didn't have the online MLS. We, you know what I mean? We had a book, or we had unadvertised, each agent had their listings, and you had to pick up the phone and have a conversation with an agent about the listing. I think we're going to have to go back to that and say, okay, I have a buyer, and I'm going to send you over my buyer compensation agreement ahead of time, and we're going to negotiate, if this offer comes to fruition, what the seller's going to pay and what the buyer's going to pay.
Okay.
And that's already covered. If you go into the PAR documents, we have documents for all of this already. They've been there all along. Why? Because we used to use them and then we stopped using them.
Okay.
In addition, buyer's agents are really going to have to sit down with their brokers and understand the BAC. We've all been signing them in this market, but I can't tell you how many times I have personally seen them come over in offers from other agents, inadvertently attached, and they're blank,
Oh.
which means if my seller wasn't paying a BAC, this agent is going to work for free.
Oh, I see. See, I don't get to see
So,
these things.
Yeah.
We don't get to see those things.
what if in the new world here that we're
Yeah.
entering, there is no BAC? These agents have to understand those forms to protect themselves. Doesn't mean they're not getting paid. Just means they have to understand the forms and fill them out properly and have these conversations with their buyers in advance to actually taking them on as clients.
Okay.
So they're going to have to do the same work as a listing agent to get a buyer. And I think buyers are going to get savvy too and start interviewing their agents before they start the relationship with them to figure out, okay, what are you doing and for what cost? What's it going to cost me to get X, Y, and Z services? And what do you provide that this other agent doesn't provide?
Hmm.
And I think that's something that we're going to be moving into.
So you are speculating because nobody knows. We're spitballing right now. So you are thinking that realtors are going to start getting paid from buyers? Is that what you think's going to happen?
I think one of two things are going to happen. One of two things inevitably is going to happen. And of course, I don't have any crystal ball. But if all of these things come to be in July, and this isn't a for sure thing, this is just a proposed settlement. It's not written in stone yet. But if this does come to be, you're going to have to, as a buyer's agent, you're going to have to either learn how to pick up the phone and actually communicate with other agents, stop texting, stop emailing, pick up the phone and have meaningful conversations and work the deal together and figure out who's going to get paid, when, and for what.
Hmm.
And you're going to have those conversations with your buyer's clients to say, this is what I'm wanting for my services. These are the services that I'm providing, and then start having those open lines of communication and negotiate the rate that you believe that you are worth. Listing agents do it with their sellers all the time,
Sure.
all the time.
Sure.
If I show up to a listing appointment and the seller says, why I only want to pay this, oh, okay, well, we can do that. But if we're going to do that, then I'm taking away this, or, well, I need you to add that back in. And then you have this meaningful back and forth discussion until both of you feel
It's
fulfilled.
negotiable. That's what
It
you're saying.
is.
You're saying it's,
Buyers agents are going to have to do the same thing.
and I'm sure you're saying that you've been practicing with it being negotiable.
We have since
Okay.
since the day the team opened before we were a brokerage.
Yes.
And you can see those on the HUDs and the Altas that come over.
I have a question on that though. If we're opening this negotiation and buyers are going to have to start paying their buyers agents a commission out of their pocket, is that going to impact list prices and sale prices? Is it going to impact the buyer's offer up or down either way? Because traditionally the commission comes out of the seller's pocket, and now we may be taking money out of a buyer's pocket to pay the agent. Is that going to impact pricing?
I think it probably could impact pricing, just depending, and everything's going to be, I think at the very beginning, everything's going to be all over the board as agents and consumers find the new normal. So I think it's going to be all over the board. But I don't know how many times I've had a conversation with a seller that says, that's fine, it's not on the market. I'll take the deal and I'll sell it at X amount of dollars, but the buyer has to pay all of the commission. And my response to them is, all right, let me talk to the buyer, but just so that you're aware, this is their highest and best offer. And if they're paying X amount of dollars in commission, that's likely going to come off of that highest and best offer. At the end of the day, it's all the nuts and bolts of it. A house is worth what it's worth. It's going to appraise what it's going to appraise at. It's going to sell for what the best buyer in the best condition will pay for it in that moment. The commission is all part of that. So a buyer just needs to be knowledgeable. Okay, if you're paying X amount of dollars to your real estate agent, we can either work that in as additional concessions that the seller is paying, or you're going to have to factor that in when making an offer. And I think after a period of time of people getting used to this and becoming more knowledgeable of this, I think the market will counter correct the way it needs to. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting because I have already seen what the finance world has done. They're already on FHA deals. They're already saying, in a way, they're basically saying, we're not viewing any commission that the seller pays on the buyer's behalf as a concession.
Hmm.
So it's like we almost have the government saying two different things now also, because I mean, those are government backed loans. If they're saying, hey, we're going to let the seller pay the entire commission regardless of what happens, to me that's a conflict right there. So I'm kind of like a little lost on, are we saying who's responsible for what portion? And it seems like the finance, I understand the VA has not, as of right now, they have not made a decision, but FHA has, and conventional loans saying, hey, if the seller pays the entire commission, we're not using that as part of the concessions.
Well, I mean, VA already has some verbiage in that says that the seller can provide 4% seller's commission or the amount of customary cost.
It says the buyer can't pay commission.
Or I'm sorry,
The buyer can't pay
this
commission. So
seller,
that's where the
but
biggest problem is here.
but 4%, the seller can pay 4%
Yeah.
of concessions plus customary costs. So I'm wondering, and I've had somebody ask me this, is VA going to view that commission as customary costs in addition to the 4%
Yeah,
seller's assist?
yeah, and that's where like I just had a transaction that an agent actually negotiated for a VA buyer to pay additional commission because what they were being offered on an MLS wasn't enough. Well, the problem is the buyer was going between different types of financing, and they elected to go VA. And as soon as they elected to go VA, the agreement that they made with that realtor, they didn't have to pay the realtor because they went VA. This had just happened recently. So I guess that's where I'm really confused because the government can't speak out of two sides of their mouths to make things confusing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think
Because
there's
they are saying
some
there, you're
additional.
working for free,
Well, no, not necessarily,
or
because
somebody else can pay your bill.
if the agent went in with, let's say, conventional,
Hmm.
went in with a conventional and had the agreement with the buyer on a conventional, I mean, there's a stop point where you have to do the CTA to change that to VA
Hmm.
if the client is going VA, which is another time period where that agent could have renegotiated the commissions due with the seller or the listing agent at that point if they wanted to continue.
Hmm.
I mean, and of course the seller has the right to say, hey, I was going conventional, VA is not what I accepted, no deal, and would have every right to say that. But I think they're going to have to be really vigilant of those changes.
Yeah.
That's kind of a one-off, doesn't happen very often scenario.
Well, but it's
But
going to be like if you're a seller, you're going to want to take VA loans because if that means that you're stuck paying all of the commission because the VA is saying, hey, buyer's not allowed to pay.
yeah, but how much difference is that to the situation that we have been in historically in the past? I think that's the point where we have to start properly communicating with our sellers and saying, okay, these are no different than when we show up at somebody's house and say, okay, well, we've got peeling chipping paint and we're missing a handrail, and I can see there's some shingles blown off of your roof. Here's your options. You can sell as is for this price and on a conventional loan, or we can make X, Y, and Z fixes. It's going to cost you, I don't know, off the top of my head, a couple $1,000s, and then we can open it up to FHA. The seller still has the right to say, well, I don't want to put the work in. Okay, great. But just to be the Debbie Downer, because I got to tell you the best and I got to tell you the worst, we are cutting out X percentage of the buyer demographic in this particular city because that is the percentage of VA, USDA, FHA buyer consumers. So I think the same is going to have to come into play when we're pricing these properties and then figuring out what the commission's going to be. And who says we can't say, okay, if we're listing a house and the buyer is X, this is the BAC. Or if we're listing a house and the buyer is Y, then this is the commission concession that's going to go from the seller. I don't think there's anything written, correct me if I'm wrong, that says we can't start doing that.
Yeah, I just from the financing aspect, I know that's why the finance companies want to hurry up and jump out there and say, hey, this isn't going to affect us at all. But where I'm concerned is a VA buyer going to be more to disadvantage than they ever have been because of a multi-offer situation that taking a VA buyer is going to cost me way more money. I, I just don't know if that's the message that the government wants to put out there.
No.
And maybe to your point about signing CTAs or revisiting whenever financing options change, maybe we have to take another look at these forms that we use in all these transactions and building in, and like from a lawyer's perspective, we always try to plan for the unplanned in all of our contracts. Whenever, if a deal goes under contract with conventional, I'd love to build in an option to say, okay, well, if we would have the option to switch to VA, and if we do switch to VA, this is the way that the fees shift. And the forms that we use, they're standard. A lot of times they're just signed without giving much thought to them. And I have a lot of people reach out to me saying, "Oh, I signed this. I can't get out of it. I don't know what to do." We do a lot of seller disclosure type stuff cases, and there's almost always a release in those standard forms regarding that seller disclosure issue. But I think that with this change, the PAR or NAR or these other organizations that are putting together these forms might need to take a look at that language and see, how are we going to adapt to this new market, these new changes that are coming out. Or to your point, are there things might not change and it might not have a huge impact on anything that we do. But just thinking ahead to your issue, that really small issue that might come up in a 5% of deals, maybe a year. Um, yeah, it's something that should probably be addressed in the language of the
Yeah,
contract
that's what I'm
itself.
just listen, I'm a sucker for the VA buyer. I mean, I really am. I mean, because I just don't feel that it's always the best deal for them. And I think it should always be the best deal for a
Mhm.
veteran.
Mhm.
And I think what's happened is the government basically said, we're not taking on any additional costs. We just tell everybody what you can't charge them. So basically, hey everybody, you have to work for this in the settlement industry. That's the way it's been. You can't charge certain fees. Realtors couldn't charge a broker fee.
Correct.
It's not like the government was coming in and paying people. They're just taking revenue away from you. And where I'm concerned is that sounds all well and good, but you know darn well some people then don't want to work with that person, possibly.
I mean, I think they need to be educated, they need to be strategic, and I think the agent needs to be good at negotiating, picking up the phone. That's my biggest gripe in the industry is pick
Sure.
up the phone. So that you get very little emotion and actual factual information in a text message. And unless you have a heated argument going on, you shouldn't be texting. So picking up the phone and actually talking these out with the agent on the other side, I think is going to be imperative. And there's nothing out there saying, just like seller's assist or anything else, that those costs can't be added to the purchase price of the
Hmm.
property. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, I talk to clients and say, okay, what do you want your price to be? We're not going to talk about, what the buyer or what the seller's paying for this, that, and the other thing. What do you actually want them to receive? And we're going to start there. What do you want them to receive? Okay, it's X amount of dollars. Now, what do you want them to cover? Because we're going to add that on top because they need to net what they need to net so that your offer is real. And the reason why I do that is because as a listing agent, I tell my offer, my seller, I have an offer. I don't tell them that it's, 300,000 it's then this percent assist and this and that and the other. I say, okay, your net offer price is X amount of dollars. How did we arrive at that? And then I start back at the
Hmm.
beginning. But
Hmm.
this is your net. All of this stuff, I'm going to go over it real quick so you understand it. But just know I need you to plug this number in your brain and lock it there
Sure.
because it's not this, it's this. And I think we need to work that backwards with with not just our VA clients, but all of our clients. Saying, okay, here's the nuts and bolts backwards because sometimes the misinformation is oh, well, I'm getting seller's concessions. That's imaginary money that somebody's pulling off the money tree. And nobody's paying for that. It's not going on my loan. The seller's not dipping out of their pocket. It's just imaginary money tree. I'm going to reach my arm out the window, take that, and it just, all my costs go away. Poof. They need to understand how that works and that they are paying for it. One way or the other, the consumer is paying for that. It's just a matter of how that's written in a legal document.
Right. I mean, when it's all said and done, the seller wants X amount of dollars. It's just, I mean, you don't want to say this. Have we inflated the sales price? Well, depending on what cost you're going to put to somebody. If yes, that's what's happening. I mean, yes, no, we can argue that two different ways, but of course, if the sales price does reflect those things, so appraisers are going to need to know who paid what commission for them to do appraisals on properties that they use in the future because, well, in this case, did the seller pay full commission? Did the buyer pay part of the commission? Like those things are going to need to be spread out there for appraisers to accurately appraise a home because of those things.
Yeah, but they won't be reported on the MLS. So that's, again, pick up the phone and make the call.
But how is the appraiser going to know what they're appraising?
Appraisers call us all the time.
Right.
And that's only going to continue.
Wh-
Appraisers call us all the time. Hey,
Where
question about this that you sold. What was the situation with this? Because it seems off the wall. It seems unconforming, So I think that's at least in the very beginning, we're probably going to get inundated with those calls.
yeah, but like honestly, think about it. I mean, is a property different if you know darn well the seller paid 6% on a $500,000 house than if the buyer paid 3%? That's a huge thing when you're going to use that for the next home and you use that as a comp.
But here's the thing, that that's already happening in our market, right?
Oh, I know.
It's just not the mainstream, but that's already happening for the agents and for the brokers who are pushing their agents to have the BAC. I mean, and I come from an investment real estate world. So that is just another day in real estate where I come from. That's already happening and nobody's reporting that. It's just going to be more common. And now instead of me knowing it and the rest of the people who run their businesses like I do knowing it, now the entire industry
Yeah.
knows that this is happening. I've talked to so many agents who didn't even know that they could charge a buyer
Right.
a BAC. They didn't even know. Well, I just charge them a broker fee. What do you do when they buy for sale by owner? What do you do when they buy the neighbor's house and you're in the transaction? Are
Sure.
you becoming a transaction licensee? Oh, those are illegal. Who says? When did
This is my point.
oh,
Well, where
those are the golden ticket. You don't represent anybody. You're doing the paperwork and organizing everything. Those are the easy deals.
listen, half this stuff
Those
is
come
go
back.
there. The funny thing to me is I just think the settlement and whatnot is just saying, hey, please don't really look at our industry. Okay. We self-regulate. That's sort of like, and that's why I'm not convinced because I don't know if the government is really, I think was it Biden that made a comment even just recently, like because of him through this, you're going to be able to negotiate your commission. Like you've already been able to do that. There's like I don't think the consumer's really
Well,
going to save any money.
again, this just comes down to, I think, consumer awareness.
Yes,
It
I agree
comes
with you.
down to consumer awareness. And there are so many agents out there that I can tell you are doing everything right. I mean, they impress me every day. They've got a menu like walking into a restaurant. This is what I do for this. This is what I do for that. This is what I do for this. This is what I do. Pick your a la carte.
I
And I
agree.
love those. I love those. I teach my agents how to do them. A la carte. Do you want me to do a little? Do you want me to do a lot? Let me know. But I think there are a lot of newer agents that could really benefit from educating consumers on what's available and there's not one size fits all in the industry. And there's not one size fits all seller either. Some sellers are really strapped and others have got room to move. And I think that's the point here is that one size doesn't fit all. And one agent isn't doing exactly the same thing as every other agent.
So do you think that we're going to be possibly getting in the situation of changing agency, buyer agency, dual agency, seller agent? Like, do you think that's going to change at all?
I don't think it's going to change at all.
Okay.
I think that there's going to be a lot of hysteria around buyer's agents. The buyer's agents who have not been properly trained on what the law says, what their documents say, what their rights are, what the consumer's rights are in a panic. You can see them all over Facebook. It's like the second coming, I swear. I just like roll my eyes and like, this is not what it says. Calm down. Your hair's not on fire. If I got to hose you down, I will. Like I will get out the hose. But I think that I think that if nothing else, this gives the buyer's agent power. I
Okay.
don't think it's taking away their power. I think it's giving them back their power because you know as well as I do, is the listing agent is the cream of the crop in the market's eyes. They are the ones with the broad shoulders. They're the ones we talk about that have the big heads. Don't say it's me. Leave that for another one. But the buyer's agent kind of gets the crap end of the deal. They're like, oh, it's just a buyer's agent. Oh, like this is just a buyer's agent, just a buyer's agent. When did that become a thing?
Mm-hmm.
Without our buyer's agents, the seller's the seller's agent wouldn't be selling the house 90% of the time. We need our buyer's agent. And this, I think, is going to give the buyer's agent their power back to say, hey, I'm worth it. I'm the best buyer's agent in the market because I do X, Y, and Z that nobody else
That's an
does.
interesting take.
I'm a certified negotiator. I'm going to go to bat for you. I'm going to save you the most money. I'm going to find you the best house. And I don't care who I got to plow over to do it. It gives them their power back. And oh, by the way, I charge this for my services.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I need to survive. So let's talk about it. Like that's what I love about this. I don't love everything about this settlement. I don't like the basis of anything that's going on.
Yeah, because it's admitting they're saying we didn't do anything wrong, but we're going to change things.
But
That's basically anybody can spin it different ways. I mean, if you're having.
but there's opportunity.
So
There is opportunity in this settlement.
where does the 480 million? Who gets that money?
Who gets it?
Not me. I wish. Is there
This is
I haven't looked into who the particular beneficiaries of the settlement will be.
yes.
oh, I got to become best friends.
Likely a
Yeah.
class of people within that was identified by the DOJ that will be identified by the DOJ. And will money ever exchange hands, and what amount will that be? It's probably yet to be determined. But I don't anticipate any type of like class action lawsuits on the horizon at this point. Um, but I guess it's always open.
Anything
The idea is
possible.
always open.
I mean, the 40 million, it's not fines. I guess, and that's where I get with the DO. I guess maybe I misunderstood because I just thought that this was a civil lawsuit that individuals were involved, and the only reason that they were going to settle with this civil lawsuit because this isn't in the Supreme Court, I don't believe, right?
Yeah.
So this DOJ is not really suing them because that would be in federal court. I just thought that they were saying, "Hey, DOJ, we'll let you get involved, and you help give blessing on this settlement."
At the end of the day, it's a settlement agreement. There was a lawsuit that was filed, and the parties to that lawsuit settled their grievances with each other. Typically, in a lawsuit, a party that is allegedly doing some wrongdoing doesn't ever admit to doing that
Right.
wrong.
Because they still could have appealed. They were not at this wasn't the final straw. The NAR could have appealed and gone to the next step.
The point of the settlement was to stop litigation.
Correct.
We're done. We don't want to deal with this any longer. We'll acknowledge that that there may be some practices that we should change our policies around. But at the end of the day, I don't think that it was in anybody's interest to continue pushing this lawsuit any further. And then for the class of people who are going to get paid, the real estate agents who are the parties to the lawsuit. I mean, I haven't seen whether that class is open or not to be able to join if you were a real estate agent who was affected um, by these policies.
I think it would be more the sellers. It's sellers of homes that
The sellers of homes who have been affected by
Yeah.
this to join And my understanding is that the lawsuit is now over. Um, where's the door open and when does it close? I
Yeah,
think is
yeah,
probably the question that's on the table.
yeah. I just
Yeah, because there are some people in the industry that are still open to lawsuit because this NAR settlement does not protect everybody. It only protects people that are businesses and agents that were under a certain threshold, not over.
so,
So there's still a door open for further lawsuits to crop up for those class of brokerages.
so help me out with NAR to a certain degree because I saw that there were some of our big boys. Um, your company is one of the companies that are named that are definitely part of NAR.
Hmm.
But do all of the like little and I don't want to name any of the ma and pa shops, are they all members of NAR?
Again, it's voluntary. So it's up to each individual
Okay.
broker how they're going to run their broker establishments. Just like when I opened up my brokerage, I had the ability to become associated with a board, which I did.
So is it you are you connected through NAR through your board?
Yes, through your local board.
Okay, so if you're a member of your local here in Beaver County, BCAR, things like that,
Mhm.
then BCAR is the one that has the NAR membership. Is that
So,
correct?
well, here's what happens when you pay your membership and you enroll. So, we are associated with the Beaver County Board.
Okay.
You also pay in your yearly fee that covers you with your local, your state, and your national
Okay.
membership all rolled into one big membership ball.
Okay.
And it varies from county to county. So it would be different in Lawrence County, it'd be different. Ramp is different down in Pittsburgh. They all have different fees for association based on what the local county membership is. And then the state and the national are all kind of set as part of that. So you don't have to pay those memberships separately. Once you
Okay.
pay one, it just kind of dominoes down and you have the benefits of all.
So and we know agents can join their local
Mhm.
associations without their brokers joining.
Correct.
So could there be situations that agents, as long as you become part of like to me, should be where these associations like BCAR, hey, as long as you're joined with us, you're protected. Um, but could there be situations that agents could be covered under this lawsuit, but the brokers wouldn't because the broker didn't join anything? I, I don't know. Is that possible? It's just like this information is so hard to figure out. And I know it's like, hey, well, this is what we've just been doing for,
Well,
ever.
and here's the thing. I mean, when it comes to these big actions and settlements, I mean, they're really not involving the individual agent right now. I think that's going to be more of a, and correct me if I'm wrong, is, seller A was directly connected in a transaction with agent, B, who worked in an unethical manner that violated antitrust laws. And then that would be heard in a local court, I would assume. But they're not coming after the individual agents. They're coming after the big boys, the big brokerages.
The people with the big pockets,
Yep.
the
Right,
people who have the
right,
money that can fork up the settlement amount.
right.
And I think that there's probably uh you it's probably best practice to be members of NAR, of PAR, of these local, because they are the ones who issue guidance and
Mhm.
policies, and courts will look at what is the community doing um, in their business practices for evidence of negligence or of wrongdoing. So if whole class of agents are following NAR rules, NAR policies, and then you have a rogue agent who isn't, and there's like these standards that are set by
Mhm.
the community of the professionals that are doing it. Of course, we'll look at that and they'll say, well, while this policy is not law, it is evidence that you are deviating from a standard that's expected in the market. It's a reasonable person standard. It's a very elusive type of thing to put a finger on, but that's what courts will look to is are we doing what the community expects our agents to do. And I think that's kind of maybe where this might be heading.
Maybe if you could help us with this too. And and this is, I'm glad we have an attorney here because, like,
You're welcome.
yeah, normally we just have a bunch of agents. But can I know we're talking about antitrust, but can a group of people file an antitrust lawsuit civilly, or did this just get turned into, oh, this is antitrust? Do you know where I'm going with this question?
Yeah, I mean, you need to have a hook. There needs to be there needs to be a statute that was violated or a law that was passed or that was derived from jurisprudence over time where it was okay, here's a legal standard that needs to be followed. This agent, this brokerage, this practice has deviated from that standard, and we feel like we're entitled to compensation from it. So it well it, and I said this earlier, people can file lawsuits all the time for various
Right.
reasons. And as lawyers, our job is to view a case based on the facts that are presented, do a good investigation into what the claims are and and whether there's a viable cause of action, whether there's a road to relief or a road to recovery. In cases where you have sellers or buyers or people that are in involved as a consumer, and there was a wrong on either side of the transaction, and there is a legal claim in court, then yeah, that's where we'll go, and we'll review their claims and we'll file lawsuits accordingly. But it's hard to say whether this NAR settlement is going to increase the amount of lawsuits that are being brought or
That's what I'm
not.
afraid of. That's what I'm that's where I'm like really afraid of, because to me, okay, it's case law. Well, it's case law that was tried in another state. I mean, you hold a national license.
What do you mean with it? No, no, just a state license.
This is a state license. This was filed in Missouri.
Well, what you might see is the real estate commission here coming out with uh, administrative policies that need to be followed, and that at that point, if they codify this settlement
Mm-hmm.
and what they expect their agents in Pennsylvania who are regulated, who are licensed, who
Right.
the board has administrative oversight over, then that's where you could see this change coming. It takes time for
Yeah,
that to
that's what
happen.
I'm afraid.
It,
For everybody to
there's a
agree, it's gonna take
rulemaking
forever.
process
Yeah.
that's involved.
Yeah.
Well, our legislature is notorious for taking their time and
I
getting new
know.
laws passed. So whether the commission has the authority to do that or not, it's probably a question of law that I won't get into. But it's that's where we're going to see changes.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen immediately. I think that where this settlement is, it kind of gives us a high level view of where things might be going and whether that raises red flags or not for the industry. It You guys are the ones who are in it every single
Yeah.
day. Um, I think right now we're probably okay. Things aren't going to drastically or dramatically change anytime soon. Um, and even if things do change, I think, like you said, it gives people, agents, great opportunity to get themselves known, get on the board, and make a name for themselves, negotiate their own rates, be transparent with consumers. At the end of the day, I think that's the goal of the entire settlement is to um, just be on board with
Yeah.
it.
I agree. I agree. And I think agents are going to change things. I just was like, just trying to look at it from more of a shrewd, just lost standpoint. And I mean, how many case laws do you use just from that aren't Supreme Court
Well,
cases? Like that's where I guess that's where like my head is like kind of like stuck with this. Like, did we really go the distance it needed it to go?
do 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 we have legal precedent based on this
Yes.
settlement? Um, unless I, I I don't want to give you a straight answer on that because I don't know. I
No, I
haven't
know
reviewed
you.
it
I know you don't.
in full. But the if a court in Pennsylvania views this settlement, looks at a case that they have presently in front of it, and says that okay, this is the new standard.
Hmm.
If it's in line with stare decisis past practice, the way the courts have ruled over time. That's how law changes. Law comes in through lawmaking or through the real estate commission promulgating rules or policies, and then the judiciary also has this unwritten power to come up with laws or with rules that the industry needs to follow. And could it happen? Yes. Will it take time? Yes. Will it be challenged in court? Yes. So it's inevitably, I think that the fastest way to get any type of legal change would be through probably administrative policy handed down by real estate commissions and saying that these are the new rules. These
Yeah.
are the rules that you probably need to follow.
Yeah.
I'm not leaning on the legislature to get anything done. And I think court cases take inevitably a long amount of time.
They do. And I guess what scares me is like, I just did a closing right before this. We're still functioning. And if we're saying that that wasn't right, are all these closings that we're doing right now that everyone's a part of, are you subject to?
Are you opening yourself up for
Yes, that's
liability?
what I guess that's what I'm asking. Like, I, is that it? Is I just don't want to see this industry get ruined by lawsuits because at the end of the day, the consumer's going to lose. And I feel like even that settlement, I know you know damn well that some law firms probably getting at least 200 million of that $480 million settlement. So the question is, such a small percentage of those that they feel were injured are going to ever get any restitution whatsoever, if it's even considered restitution. Um, or is this going to be a thing that the government is just going to like hand money out? And I hope not.
Well, maybe money was never the point. Maybe the point was policy and law changes that really needed to happen. I mean, look at all
So
of the
can we
mess.
tell that law firm, give your $200 million back?
There's always money involved, but
There's always, but maybe that is the point.
that's the point.
Charity.
It's like
What charity? You guys should give it to charity.
not all lawsuits are about the money. Not all lawsuits are about
They're
the money.
not. They're not.
Sometimes it's about the principle. But I mean, and I know it's hard to look side by side. And I've gone into big discussions with tons of people in the industry. Is look what happened during the mortgage crisis. How we went through, all of the changes that has led us up to this point, and how long that took to occur. I mean, there was something wrong in the market that needed to change. And we were going through those same processes where everybody felt, oh, the world's over. I have to look for a new job. I have to do this. It all worked itself out. We just have to be patient. We have to keep our ears open. We have to keep training, getting up to date information, and make sure that we're changing our practices, not when they tell us that we have to, before they tell us that we're supposed to. We just have to be better.
Yeah.
We have to start being better.
It's just the one difference with that. The government did come in and say, hey, lender, you're just responsible for the whole process. That's basically what happened. So you're responsible for the whole thing. That's why the CDs and whatnot that come out, they come from the lender because the lender thinks title company, you're a moron. Everybody's an idiot. We're responsible for the whole thing. So because the government kept on getting frustrated, well, whose responsibility? Oh, it was the lender. Oh, it was the appraiser. The government goes, stop this nonsense. I'm blaming one freaking person. And they were able to then throw in auditors and whatnot into the underwriting room. But this one is like, I just don't know how they're going to really get their hands around it. Is there really a problem? Number one, I'm not even convinced that there's a problem, but I'm hoping. I think most of the people are good in this industry. I think we can agree. You do things right.
Absolutely.
You do things right, or you intend to do things right. It's just always those people that ruin it for all of us.
Well,
You know,
I don't even think it's the bad people that ruin. I think we've gotten to the point where we're creatures of habit.
you're right.
We are creatures of habit. It takes 21 days to create a habit. It takes 21 days to break a habit. So if we've done something a dozen times and it's worked flawlessly a dozen times, what are we going to do? We're going to keep doing it.
Correct.
And then we're going to tell other people to do it. And when we train new people, we're going to tell them to do it.
Right.
So now everybody is doing the same exact thing without us even like there was no like some meeting of the minds. We didn't like rent out, the convention center and say, hey, everybody, like this is what we're going to charge. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. There was none of that. It was monkey see, monkey do.
I agree.
And that's how
No.
I
You made a
watched.
great point.
I sat in the office and I watched
Great
the
point.
agents who were on the top of their game, and I'm like, she does that, he does that, they do that. That's what I'm gonna do. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I don't know if it's right or wrong. That's just I see them doing it, and they get a pat on the back. That's what I'm gonna do, and it worked. So that's where we're at. We're just creatures of habit. I think we need to break that habit and start. It needs to be cool to be different. I'm a little weird. I'm a little different. I'm pretty cool about it. So we need to be cool and different.
Last question. Last question. And Christina, this is more for you because this is where I'm like, I'm nervous for brokers.
Okay.
And you being a broker, you're probably going to be representing some of these guys in these. We're in this world that the agent became more powerful than the broker.
In some cases.
And the reason I'm saying that is we've got all of these people flying all over the country going to they're part of these speakers that aren't even their brokers. You've got agents that don't even listen to their brokers. They listen to this third party person that is giving information. How the heck do you see this as a challenge, or do you have a plan on you're going to roll it back and say, hey guys, agents under me, I'm responsible for everything you do. So I understand that you're bringing people, you're bringing business in and whatnot, but you're working under my license. I'm the one that gets in trouble. What 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 do you worry?
That's something that'll make any broker lose sleep at night. Trust me. And I think that it's important to make sure that new agents are properly trained. One, because for you to think that they just opened the book, they read it, they took the test, and now they just know it, promise you they do not. They need to be properly trained. And at least in our brokerage, we have our online learning portal, 1.u, which is great. It has tens of thousands of different self-paced learning, but I don't think that's enough, which is why we have on average 2 in-person trainings every week, especially for new agents that new agents are required to be at.
Okay.
Now, experienced agents, we want to make sure that we're gaining a good grasp of what their knowledge is, what they're doing right, and what they're doing wrong, so that we can correct the issues before they do them again. But I also think it's important for the broker to admit defeat when they've hired the wrong agent. And I'll be the first one to tell you that I have hired people in the past that I should have never hired. And I'm not afraid to get rid of them just as quick.
But that's a good point. That's a
Not
great point.
every broker should not hire any agent that walks through the door.
Right.
You shouldn't. And once that agent becomes a liability, they need to be a liability on their own. And if the broker does not set that standards, does not have some type of warning system like you would anybody else that works in your brokerage, it says, hey, this is your warning. Here's additional training. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to monitor your next deal from start to finish. Whatever you want that to look like, if that person just says, well, I'll do what I want, well, you can do what you want with somebody else, but you're not going to do it with me. Because we expect, if the law is here, we expect to be up here, not down here.
Right.
And one bad agent will ruin your reputation, will ruin the liability that you have set in place. They will break down all of your boundaries, and they will destroy the culture of your brokerage.
I think, in all fairness, only if you allow it to keep going on.
If you allow it,
right?
yes.
Because let's face it, you don't know what everybody is going to say or do. But once you find out, at that point in time, you probably do have a responsibility.
Well, and here's what I can tell you is the thing that does happen when you tell an agent, hey, I want to meet with you once a week. Hey, I want to, even if it's 15 minutes, just to say, hey, how's it going? Do you have any problems? What do you got going on? It's 99.9% of the time is really well received. Agents a lot of time want that extra attention to say, okay, I think I did this right. I think I know the answer, but can I bounce it off of you so you can just tell me that I'm right so I can gain my confidence enough to know next time I'm doing this, I'm doing it right. A lot of times they already know the answer. They just need that reassurance from you that says, yes, as your broker, this is exactly what I would have done. Or maybe you could have done it this way or seen it from this point of view.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Or opened it up to this negotiation. I mean, I've never had it poorly received that says, hey, I want to go grab a coffee with you. I want to have a meeting with you. I want to see you face to face and make sure you're still breathing and you're not in the trunk of a car somewhere. Like I want that interaction. And I've never had an agent say, well, I don't want to meet with you. I'm not wasting my time. Never,
Well,
never, never.
I hope that the brokers are the ones that get the education, and it goes to you guys first,
Hmm.
because it's really up to you to take that to your troops.
Absolutely.
And I hope that this goes off without we're talking about going to court, because none of us are going to win, and the consumer's not going to win either. And hopefully you can help keep guiding people through this.
Yeah, and the law is the floor. We always advise our brokerages, our property management companies. We want you to be a step beyond to defray any potential lawsuit or liability down the road. And I know Christina's firm does a great job in terms of educating their agents and kind of setting that bar that much higher, to make sure that you're not opening yourself up. And that's a huge point, uh, to drive home.
and
I think that's his way of saying, like, yeah, Christina bugs me every 2 seconds. Like, what should I do? Should we do this or should we do this? Or what's this mean? Or can you interpret this? And we do. And they're great. They're absolutely wonderful.
that's great. Everybody needs to have somebody to lean on,
Hmm.
whether for you to give the advice, for them to make the decision. And it's great that you guys have that relationship to respect each other's decision.
No, absolutely.
Well, guys, thank you for coming on. I will tell you, a lot of people aren't very brave about talking about this. So you guys are very brave. You've both given insight that helped me see it from a different aspect too, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome.
All right.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you,
Thanks for
you
having us.
guys.
Thanks.